In this video, we're going to be talking about my Millyard Viper 8-litre V10 motorcycle, do a few safety checks and take it for a spin, and there's also some clips from Elvington runway and the Isle of Man. The rain had properly set in for the day. I couldn't take the Viper into the garden because it would sink up to its axles in the mud, so I had to do the works in the garage. So the first thing I had to do was take off the seat and get my little tool to operate my mechanical centre stand ratchet. The ratchet mechanism makes easy work of lifting the 600 kilo Viper bike onto the main stand. As soon as the centre stand hits the ground, it won't go back up, so it stabilises the bike, allowing you to operate with one foot and one hand with total stability. With the bike on its centre stand, I can now rotate the rear wheel and check the rear tyre for any damage. And everything's fine, so that's good. Whilst I'm spinning the wheel, I have a look at the rim as well for any damage and also check the chain. I haven't ridden the bike much this year, so the chain hasn't needed to be adjusted. And while I'm looking at the rear wheel, I just check all the bolts are tight on the main axle bolt and the sprocket. If I did need to adjust the chain tension, it's an easy job by loosening these 4 cap head bolts on the end of the swinging arm, and that allows the spindle to rotate inside its eccentric casing, adjusting the wheel forwards or backwards. I use the chain oiler a lot when I'm riding the bike, so I top that up with some ZX1 oil, and the easiest way for me to do that is with an old oiling can. It goes straight in with no drips. I noticed that one of the clutch reservoirs is a bit low on fluid, so I topped that up with some brake fluid. That's better. Behind this cover is a bearing for the swinging arm, and this is greased with a grease nipple that's down between the shock absorber and the silencer, just there. So I use my greasing gun to lubricate the swinging arm bearings. The next thing I check is the alternator belt. This is down the front of the bike, and it needs to be kept tight, and that's absolutely fine, so I didn't need no adjustment this time. I carry a spare in the rear as well, just in case I'm caught when I'm out, because once when I was testing at Bruntingthorpe, I broke the belt. I look outside and it's still raining. Moving to the front of the bike, I need to jack up the wheel. I've got this purpose-made jack that I made for the Viper bike that clips into the bottom of the sump, like that. And by turning the handle, I can just raise the front wheel off the ground so I can spin it to check for damage. Well, the wheel rotates fine. There's no notchy bear ends and no play, and I can't feel any damage in the rims, so that's really good. So the next thing I do is wipe off the tyre and check for any damage to the tyre. I had a good look and a good feel around the tyre, and there's no damage that I could see. I did notice a bit of uneven wear on the sides, on both sides. It seems to do that regularly, but that must be something to do with the weight, I think, and the stress in the corners. So then I check the wheel nuts tight and the caliper bolts are all tight, which they were. While the wheel's off the ground, I can show you the speedo pickup for my digital dash. It's got an LED that flashes every time it passes a bolt, and the speed is calculated from this. I then check the forks for smooth operation. And everything's fine, so I can lower the bike back down. I'm now going to check the oil level in the sump, When I made the Viper bike, I turned the oil filter around 90 degrees so it faced backwards. But in doing this, it blocked up the dipstick hole, so I had to remove it. So I've now got a removable plastic bung, which I lift out, and I store the dipstick in the rear fin. But it's quite easy to do. You just lower the dipstick down past the oil filter, engage it with a crankcase, push it right down hard till it hits the bottom, and then lift it out and check your oil. And it's perfect. So I'm well pleased with that. I changed the oil a year ago, and it looks brand new. But it has only done 150 miles. With the oil level checked, I replaced the plastic bung and snap it down on its O-ring seal, and then clean the dipstick and replace that in the rear fin, ready for next time. Next thing I did was check the radiator coolant. I took off the cap to have a look in. I could see the liquid and it was above the core, but I added a little bit just to make sure. And there we go. And now I replace the cap, and that's all good. Quick squeeze of a rubber hose just to make sure it's got no air trapped in it. And it's all good, so the cap goes back on. I carry some tools on the Viper, just for doing like minor repairs if I need to at the side of the road. And the most important thing is my Swiss Army knife. I use that for everything. The next thing I do is check the tyre pressures. The Viper bike runs 42 psi front and rear, and it was down a little bit, so I added a bit of air. With the tyre pressures checked, it's now time to drop it off the centre stand. This is really easy to do, just using my ratchet. Put both the side stands down, and I just pump it off the centre stand, and it falls forward. And then the centre stand just goes up and holds on the ratchet with its backup spring. Just like that. With such a heavy bike, it's great to have two side stands. I can rock it between the side stands with one arm, just pulling it from right, back to neutral, and then left. And you wouldn't think this bike weighs 600 kilos, and it's as easy to manoeuvre as that. And having the two stands just gives you peace of mind when you're working on it. I made this seat for racing at Elvington. It lowers my body down and gives me something to push against with the acceleration, because it doesn't half accelerate, and it's nice to know you're not going to slide straight off the back. But I much prefer this seat for general riding. It's got more padding. Well, with all the checks done, and the sun's come out, so let's go for a ride. how's that going to go? Hello, is that Brian? Brilliant. I'm taking the Viper up to Elvington in a couple of weeks' time to run it on the runway. Do you want to come and help out in the pits and maybe go on the back for a 2-op test if we're allowed? You can? Great. Okay, I'll let you know the details later. See ya. Bye. This is Elvington runway in Yorkshire. It's 2 miles to the trees, but it don't take long to get there. Back to my ride. I had a great time and it was running so nice. The power is amazing. So until the next video, see you all soon and don't forget to subscribe.